Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes. On this Monday afternoon, I'm joined by Colin Watt, and I promised on Saturday that I would use the tagline Celtic soar into 13-point lead at the top of the table if Barry Robson's Aberdeen got a result yesterday, and they certainly did. Colin Watt, tell me about the ups and downs of your weekend.
Yeah, I tell you what, there was plenty of ups, plenty of downs. I think yesterday afternoon probably tipped the scales back into the happiness side of the weekend, especially after my own team went out in the cup down here, so not great. But sitting watching that football yesterday afternoon was a joy to behold. And I'm only talking about Newcastle putting 6 past Spurs because that was a great game of football. But no, felt quite disappointed walking away from the game on Saturday. And I think that's all to do with the levels that's been set by Celtic and by Ange and the team. To watch a performance like that, especially 1 week out from what's potentially the biggest game of the season, it was disappointing to come away from it. But as I say, yesterday's result obviously tipped the scales back in our favour. 13 points clear. Time to wrap it up next weekend, hopefully.
And the meme of Homer Simpson backtracking into the hedge was much used last night, and quite rightly so. So what we're going to be talking about today, we'll be talking about Celtic's performance, what went wrong on Saturday, the reaction to that as well as yesterday's high point of the weekend, I would suggest. And also the fact that one of our players scored the opening goal, Liam Scales. What does that say about the loan system and how we could better use it? I want to talk about Rocco Vata. And I deliberately didn't get involved in too much of the to and fro of social media after making the point that I thought he made a good impact, because it was very interesting to see the impact of that particular comment. Also, the women's team, they've been doing the business as well. Colin will talk all about that. The fixtures, the coronation and winning the league, and also not winning the league at Ibrox. One more win to 2 in a row. Some more links for Ange Postecoglou. We're going to have to get used to that. More noise coming out of Ibrox. Jota, Hatate, Abada, will they be back? Awata's performance, Carter Vickers' performance, and everything else you want to chuck in on the comments section. If you are subscribing, you will be able to comment on A Celtic State of Mind, and we do thank you for subscribing. You can also give us a big thumbs up, a big like, always helps us as well. So give us that on the YouTube channel as we grow. We're a wee bit busy this week, but in the next couple of weeks, you will see a brand new Acsom show appearing on the channel. It's going to look a wee bit different. Colin's nodding his head because he has seen I was going to say the blueprint. He's seen the green print of that particular show. It's going to be something a wee bit different time of the day. It will not affect the Acsom bulletin at 12:30 every day, but it is something a wee bit new. I think that we need to freshen it up a wee bit, and we have a new show fully produced, all singing, all dancing, with the lighting, the makeup, the hair, all that stuff, Colin. Right, we're going to start off with the performance. You were saying that you left the stadium on Saturday a wee bit disappointed. And I think I seen a comment made by John Hughes, one of our contributors, yesterday, going on about the importance of trying to remain level-headed after a disappointing performance. And I think, having done the match days for about 3 years now, I try my best, and it becomes almost natural, even when you're disappointed, Colin, because you know that there's going to be a lot of people angry, frustrated, and back in the day, that might have happened on the supporters bus. That now happens on social media channels. So it's all out there, all the anger and all the frustrations out there immediately. What was your thoughts, and where do you think the performance lacked the usual Ange tempo and flair?
Do you know, for me, it was the fullbacks, and I'm not necessarily picking them out to be the weakest players in the team on Saturday, but I didn't see the overlapping fullbacks or the inverted fullbacks as such that we've came to expect from a team, especially when we're playing at home. I didn't think that Johnston got far forward enough. I don't think Taylor did as well. I noticed it more in the second half, especially when we brought young Rocco Vata on. They just came out and doubled up on him, and Johnston never took that opportunity to go round them to help him out. And he was putting in crosses basically 1v2 himself. So we didn't really seem to see that. We didn't get that free-flowing passing football in the middle of the park. I think Kyogo was pretty much anonymous because he wasn't really getting the service. And the thing is, when you walk away from it, we probably played slightly worse than won. And we had plenty of opportunities. Well, I say plenty of opportunities. We definitely had a handful of opportunities to walk away with the 3 points, especially O's miss and Starfelt's towards the end as well. But I do feel as if it's probably just a kick up the backside that we needed, because the performances, especially at home over the last couple of weeks, have been up and down. We had that great performance, obviously, away at Kelly, but you take the second half into the equation, okay, you're already 4-1 up, but it's not typical of a Celtic team just to sort of step off the gas. And yeah, we're winding down. We don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. We're 13 points clear now. We were 12 going into the game on Saturday. We can't really afford to let our standards slip. And the fact that I walked away from that disappointed just shows how high the standards at Celtic have been.
No, it is about standards. Ange spoke about it after the game as well, Colin. And I don't think there was a knee-jerk reaction after the game. We were disappointed, of course, but I was looking for some positives, and that's what went out on the socials. And we'll talk about that. We'll talk about Rocco Vata and his performance. But I think it's an interesting point you make there, where we've played worse and came away with a win. I think that's true. I think that you could look at quite a few of the chances. Two of the chances that Rocco created, one for we'll come back to him as well, because you've got to take that chance. One for Starfelt, where I don't think it was as clean cut, but he's got to get it on target. There's also a chance that Maeda had, where Haksabanovic has done very, very well to win the ball back, and he dinks a ball right over to Maeda. He needs to do better there. Yep. And then you've got Kyogo, which, yes, decent enough save. I'm loath to give the goalkeeper any kind of credit after his performance, but a decent enough save where he's trying to dink it over the keeper. So there's 4 chances. And you know, normally one of them's going in. Normally Kyogo's scoring that goal, Colin, you know, out of all those 4 chances. And you come away and you think, you know what, these 3 games against Motherwell have been a bit sticky this season, but we got through them. It didn't happen. It really is as simple as that. That's the margin. I think from the game, Haksabanovic isn't a right winger, is one of the things I'll take from it. I'm not even sure Kyogo, and by the way, I think maybe Liam Carrigan will disagree with this. I don't think Kyogo is as effective when he's not through the middle. Just my personal opinion. I've not seen it yet. And these are the things that we're learning. However, when you're going into the game and Forrest is injured, Jota's injured, and Abada's injured, you're playing your 3rd or 4th choice right winger in Haksabanovic. As much as we've spoken about him and said we need to get more game time into his legs, Colin, you know, for all intents and purposes, he's your 3rd or 4th choice right winger. And I think that showed. So the delivery wasn't there. The understanding between him and Johnston down the right-hand side isn't there. There was a moment where, and I mentioned this after the game, O'Reilly's looking for Haksabanovic to do the overlap. If it's Jota, he's doing it without looking, and Jota's there. He done it, the ball rolls out the park, because the understanding wasn't there. The dynamic wasn't there, was it?
No, it wasn't. And do you know, I don't know about the positioning of Haksabanovic, to be honest, because when you take a look at when he's come on and when he's played really well, it's typically been down the left-hand side, cutting in and hitting the shot on the right foot.
Yeah.
So being out on that right, I mean, we see it with Jota as well. Jota's obviously someone who can play down both sides, but he's always been someone who prefers to play down that left to cut inside and to get the shot away. So, I mean, this is what we're seeing now from your modern wingers. Gone are the days where you used to see someone hitting down onto the touchline, onto the byline, getting the ball across. There's very few players that are like that nowadays, especially the sort of types of your Haksabanovic and your Jota, because their first thought is, I'm going to contribute to this team, and if it's not an assist, I'm going to ping one in myself. Whereas your old traditional wingers, it was getting the ball in, beat your man, get a crossover, which was more of what we've seen when Rocco Vata came on. His first thought was to get the ball over.
Yeah.
But when you look at the way that Celtic line up now, so on Saturday, obviously it was Maeda, Kyogo, and Haksabanovic. Maeda is not a winger. He's never a winger in a million years. He can get his man. Can he beat him? Yes, he can. His crossing is really, really poor. It's poor. And it's not really improved much since he's took over that position. The problem that we've got in that position is his work rate is so good that you take him out of the team, especially when you come up to like this game coming up on Sunday, and you're like, there's something massively missing there. You need a Maeda to be able to play the high press that we play. You take a look on the right-hand side, and there was Haksabanovic. He naturally doesn't want to go down and hit the byline. He wants to try and cut inside, and he wants to try and get the shot away. His left foot, not his strongest. So then what did Motherwell do? They just doubled up on him and forced him to go outside, and it sort of neutralised him. We did switch the wingers at one point. I did notice that Ange put Maeda onto the right and Haksabanovic onto the left, and he did seem to get a bit more joy from that. But if that's the way that we're setting up, you've got to look at what we do on Sunday, because anybody can take a look at that game footage from Saturday, see what Motherwell did, and do the exact same. So we are going to have to change it up. For me, I'd like to see Haksabanovic more through the middle for this game on Sunday.
If indeed he makes it. We'll be talking about Abada and Jota a wee bit later in the show as well. 800 strong in the live stream. Thanks everybody for getting involved. If you subscribe, you can comment. So please do that. Get your comments in, and we will bring up a selection of those as we go through. Starting off with Celtic Follower on the YouTube channel. Afternoon all. When the fixture list for the last 5 games being made, you think it's about tea time today, Colin? So
yeah, I'd imagine so. Yeah,
not during this show, I don't think. I wonder who we'll get at home. We'll be having a wee chat about that as well. And we've also got the Tobago Street Police Station Celtic Supporters Club. You've still not told me how many members you've got in that CSC. Rip roaring, never boring, always soaring, to paraphrase Tony. Yes. And Stubbs' horse comes in with an alternative. Eyes pouring, never roaring, always imploding. I'll take that, to paraphrase all the Rangers. Any others, leave them in the comments section, because obviously we can refresh that anytime we want. And Tom Milligan, so after all, that Saturday was actually a point gained. It was, Tom. It was a point gained. And as Kaiser quite rightly say, Rangers were silenced by the Lambs. Thanks for that. Gary Doonan, we're going to talk about this. We definitely are. Where does Scales man in the match performance versus them leave him in the out on loan but coming back ratings? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section. Should Scales come back? Obviously not based on one performance, but not long after he went to Aberdeen, Colin, you and I are, I would say, pally with a few Aberdeen fans who used to contribute to the state of Scottish football. They were talking about making that move permanent. And obviously there would have been a transfer fee probably in excess of $500,000, which is what we paid for him, in the offing as well. So it's not just one performance we're talking about here. I think there's been up and downs at Pittodrie. Of course there has been. We don't have to get into all that. But over the piece, I think Scales has done well for Aberdeen.
He has, and Glenn from the Red Tinted Glasses podcast that I catch up with pretty regularly, he was really positive about Scales for the sort of first half of the season. When Aberdeen's form dipped, I think Scales' form dipped as well, which is completely natural. We saw that ourselves even during the behind closed doors season. A lot of the players that we now look at to be extremely impressive had some poor games. So with Aberdeen's return to form, we've seen Scales return to form, and he looks very natural in that sort of left-sided centre-back position. And it'll be interesting because we've mentioned on this show, and many contributors have said it as well, that we don't really have that naturally left-footed centre-back. We've been playing sort of Starfelt in there, and at times we've seen where it's sort of caught us out, and I think a lot of the criticism he gets is because he's not naturally left-footed. He's always wanting to go on his right, and he's playing at left centre-back. Will Scales come in and dethrone any of the centre-backs just now? No, he won't. Could he be a good addition in the squad, especially when you take a look at things like the bench we had on Saturday? I could have seen Scales on that bench, to be perfectly honest. And if he can put cross, shots, whatever he wants to call it, like that in against the Rangers, then I'm sure he'll find a place in the Ange's squad. The
thing is with that, though, is it's just a trait, I think, in Scottish football. If that happens, it must be luck. I'm looking at it thinking, why? Why is it luck? You know what I mean? I know you gave the wee thumbs up, the wee wink and all the rest of it, but if I'm a footballer, I'm taking that every day of the week, and I meant it every single day of the week as well. You said something earlier. Sorry,
Paul. Here's one. If Scales wasn't a Celtic player and was playing like that, the Celtic get linked with him?
Probably. Yeah. Probably, because if you stand out in a Scottish game, that generally is what happens. I mean, what I want to do is expand on Gary's point there in terms of the loan signings, and something we've gone on about quite a bit. Colin, you and I, we don't always agree on players. In fact, there's some strong disagreements. To name a few, let's start off. Moritz Bauer, you didn't rate him at all.
Nope.
I thought you underrate him. I think he was, particularly with his distribution, I quite liked him. Terrible dress sense. And the other one was Luca Connell. And I'm still waiting for that 20 quid, Jimmy, because he never did come back and play a game.
He's so good. He's been playing extremely well. Sent you that goal he scored in his debut for Barnsley. Outstanding.
He scored a few more as well since.
Yeah.
I think his career just stalled at the wrong time. I remember him playing, I think it was the friendly against Rennes, would that be right? I remember seeing him that day and thinking he looked good, he looked comfortable. He was about 18-year-old at the time.
Do you know who else was playing for Rennes that day? 16-year-old in the middle of the park that's now went on to sign for Real Madrid.
Who was it?
Now, I was hoping you would tell me the name because I can't remember it off the top.
Oh, you can't do that. Come on, Quizmaster Colin.
Somebody in the comment section will tell me exactly.
They definitely will tell us in the comment section. And he was playing for Rennes as a 16-year-old. The other thing you were saying there, get it out your system, right? And obviously that bad, and it was a poor performance. Ange's accepted that. Carl McGregor's accepted it as well. Get it out your system. I do agree with that because I think when you set your standards so high, Colin, all week they will be, dying to get back on that park.
Yes, Barry Camavinga.
All right. Was he any good? I can't remember.
He was outstanding that day.
It was a bad day. I mean, I remember that. That was one of the kind of pointless season ticket friendlies. And I always say, well, get someone in that means something, either to the history of the club or to the fans, like a St. Pauli, if it was a fan thing, get them in for a friendly. If it was a historical thing from the club's perspective, get someone, an old foe from European football to come and play us, but we never seem to do that. So do you believe in that then? The fact that, get the bad game at your system, and because the standards are so high, the players will be itching as much as we are to get on that park and play Rangers at the weekend?
I do think so. When you look at it, maybe in previous seasons, if you drop points, it would be like, right, put it to the back of your mind, just go out, play your football. Not under Ange, because he has not only installed this sort of mantra of the we never stop, but he's installed this mantra of always improving. He doesn't want to just settle at this level. He wants to keep going up and up and up. And he only accepts players that have that mantra as well. He doesn't want them to have the mentality of, oh, we just had one bad game, don't worry about it, it'll be fine next week. He wants them to be walking off the park gutted. He wants them to always continue to want to improve. And you heard it in his post-match press conference as well. They never hit the levels that he set. And he knows that, and the players after the game spoke that as well. So I fully expect that on Sunday there'll be a lot of players that want to vastly improve on the performance that they put on Saturday. And this week at Lennoxtown would be really interesting to be a fly on the wall just to see what they're working on.
Yeah, and again, I think what you get from the likes of Callum McGregor, I think Joe Hart would be part of that as well, is a dressing room that even before Ange enters it, are already making those demands, Colin. They're already saying, listen, we dropped below what we have set here. The bar has been set. We've dropped below it. It's time to put it right. One final point about the game, and I've got to mention it because it was the worst example I've seen. I understand when a team comes to Celtic Park, Colin, that if they try and play open, expansive football, we'll do a Hibs to them. We'll beat them 6-1. We'll beat a team in Dundee United 9-0 away from home. If you try and play football, we can do that to you, right? But what Motherwell did wasn't just a defensive game plan, strict and all this kind of stuff, right? It was absolute anti-football. You're looking at players who are rolling back onto the park to delay the play. You're looking at a goalkeeper who, honestly, I mean, I was looking at his face thinking to myself, how can you look at yourself in the mirror? The play acting was unbelievable with his leg injury. The length of time every single by kick was getting taken. But at the time and after the game, I said to John and Paddy, I said, but that is up to us to make that right. And if we take one of the chances that we spoke about, Colin, you forget all that nonsense. Yeah. And they're actually, going into the last few minutes of injury time, praying for a chance. Now, Obviously, we don't have to play them again this season. We're going into the post-split fixtures, but that was one of the worst examples I've seen of anti-football at Celtic Park.
It's a real shame because I heard that there's no grapes to be bought in Motherwell because they've all been sent to the Motherwell players that are recovering in hospital after that game. Honestly, look, I sort of understand it to an extent, right? You come up to Celtic Park, and when's the last time teams like that get a victory at Celtic Park or get a chance to walk away with anything from the games? That's how dominant, even during the poor seasons, how dominant we have been. So you take any opportunity. I understand that. I don't blame the Motherwell team for what they did, but as you say, when you're a spectator, you're looking at it and you're going, this just isn't enjoyable to watch. It's extremely frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, I was impressed that the referee added on 8 minutes or 7 minutes or whatever it was, because there'd be times gone by where there'd still only be 3 or 4 minutes added and you'd be even more frustrated. Could it have been more? Quite potentially. But as you say, if Celtic take them chances, we're not talking about that.
No, you're right.
So,
it's being accountable, Colin. It's about taking accountability and saying, right, okay, that's what you're up against, but Kyogo should have scored that. Maeda should have scored that. And should have scored the header.
Because you can guarantee if it was 2-1 Celtic in the last couple of minutes and Motherwell were pushing for the equaliser, they wouldn't be doing that. It's the way football goes. But one thing I do have to say is I was very, very impressed with Kevin Van Veen. I think he's a fantastic striker up there. I thought he did really well against the Celtic back four. He turns Greg Taylor inside out basically for that goal. He was unlucky not to get a second. When you've got players of that quality at Motherwell, you're just thinking, like, if you would just continue to invest and find these players, you can get up that table. You can get into top six. You can get into Europe. This big gap that they keep talking about, if you can pick up guys like Kevin Van Veen, just continue to keep that scouting going.
It's recruitment, Colin. It's the quality of recruitment, as well as the youth policy, which we're going to get on to. One last point about Aberdeen, again, Barry Robson. What a job, Barry. And the reason I'm talking about him is he's an ex-Celt. He's a bit of a cult hero, isn't he, Barry Robson? We've seen the footage time and time again of him nailing Christian Daly earlier in a Glasgow Derby game, and he's done so well. But it's one of these ones where Aberdeen have to give him that job permanently. Dundee United have to give Jim Goodwin that job, another ex-Celt, the job permanently. If they want to build on something, these are the decisions that need to be made. I mean, every now and again you'll see somebody throwing their hat in the ring. Is Joey Barton trying to get the Hearts job, for example, or something like that? And people sometimes get wooed by that. Let's go for profile. No, you go for somebody like Barry Robson, who's actually proven that he can do his job.
The thing is, Barry Robson's not done that just once. He's done it twice now at Aberdeen. He's been in that position twice, and they overlooked him the first time. There's no chance they can overlook him this time. What he's managed to get out of that squad is really, really impressive.
Yeah.
I think that's 6 wins in 7 games. I would say they're definitely favourites for the third spot just now. Mm-hmm. And do you know what? I think when we come up against them, it's going to be a really, really tough game.
Hopefully the league's won by then. Paddy Lavery brings up, well done, the girls. Yeah, we're going to be talking about that, Paddy. Colin's a massive fan, has been for a while. And obviously we had a few of the Acsom team at the game as well. We are a patron of the women's team, a Celtic State of Mind. So part of that is that we do have troops at the games. Jungle Lion, if Celtic beat this gang next week, they won't turn up for the league game. Celtic might get 2 stands. Right. Picture the scene. We beat them in the cup. We're going for the treble. We won't count our chickens, even though you're playing a team in the final from division or divisions below you. Right. So that will be the situation. They'll have nothing to play for, Colin. We won't be winning a league at Ibrox. We've already been told that. The police won't allow it to happen, right? So what does happen with that final game, which Celtic don't have any tickets for? Would it still be a full house?
Yeah.
You think?
Yeah. Yeah, it would. I mean, look, even if I'm playing them at Tiddlywinks, I'd still want Celtic to win. Mm-hmm. So I think in general, the Rangers fans are very similar to us, and they'll think that if they can put a couple past Celtic and get the 3 points, then it wins Michael Beale's imaginary league, and they've got the momentum on their side for next season. So I understand some of the talk that there's been about, well, send the boys out to play them and do this and do that. No. Just beat them. Just beat them. I want to beat them every time I play them.
No, absolutely. But will they turn up to the party?
Yeah, they will.
I remember games like this a lot growing up, obviously, and not going to be all Celtic dab about it, but growing up during the 90s and their 9 in a row. And often this final fixture of the season was rendered meaningless insofar as it wouldn't have any bearing on the league title, Colin. I don't mean meaningless because, as you've already said, you always want to win the games. But one of the games I do remember was during the Hampden season in 94-95. We beat them 3-0. And Rocco Vata scored a free kick. And he ran away, and his celebration was kind of like George Cadetti-esque, if I remember right. I'd need to watch it back. Obviously, Rudy's 18-year-old son has been making some substitute appearances for the first team. Highly rated. Earlier on in the season, there was a supposed £2 million offer or deal getting done to try and prize him away from Celtic Park. We bang on about the youth all the time. There's probably 14 or 15 players left Celtic now who have come through the academy, many of whom have never played for the first team. And the next kind of bright shining light in that conveyor belt is Rocco Vata. He's obviously represented Ireland at underage level. He came on against Kilmarnock and placed a brilliant cross at the feet of Oh, who missed. He comes on against Motherwell. I'm going to tell you how I've seen it. This is how it played out in my observations, Colin, and I want you to agree, disagree, and we can discuss it. It comes on where it's not been working down the right-hand side for Haksabanovic, other than that time where he's lost the ball, he gets it back, he dinks it over, Maeda misses a chance. I thought Haksabanovic was poor. So Rocco Vata comes on. He's just turned 18 last week. He's got, at the time, 10 minutes to make a difference. Obviously, he gets 18 minutes with the injury time. And in that time, he places 2 crosses over, one on the head of O, which he should score, one on the head of Starfelt, which he should get on target, and then anything's possible. And I've seen a hell of a lot of criticism after the game. It's not why I put out that was a positive, but I've seen a lot of criticism, and I think it's unfair. Some of the criticism I've seen was that, if he can't unsmart Stephen O'Donnell, he's not got a future in the game. I'm paraphrasing, but that was the point. And I'm thinking, wait a minute. This is a young guy who's just turned 18. Whatever you think about Stephen O'Donnell, and he's not my favourite player, he's a Scottish international player, Colin, who I think, if you check, was man of the match the last time we played England. Am I right in saying that?
I have no idea.
Right. So he's got the experience, and playing against an 18-year-old should be meat and drink for a player like Stephen O'Donnell. And bear in mind, he hadn't been on the park for 80 minutes because he actually came on as a sub after Rocco came on. So no, he didn't beat him. He didn't show a trick and beat him, etc. But what he did do is he had a directness, he had the confidence to play the 2 balls in. And actually, I think that he was let down quite a bit by Aaron Moy and Alistair Johnson, who constantly just bailed out and gave the ball to him, rather than Johnson overlapping and giving him an out, or Moy playing a 1-2. He just bailed out and gave the ball to him, expected him to maybe beat a man and get a cross in. And if we want youth to do well, Colin, we need to have a bit of patience. We need to realise that this is a kid who's stepping up from the 5th tier to the first team. He's playing against international players. It's one each, and we're looking for him to do something special. He's been built up. He's been hyped up. But let's give him a bit of time. And by the way, social media does make a huge impact, does have a huge impact on players, inexperienced and experienced. And I think we just need to watch that. We need to be mindful of that as well. As it happens, we draw the game, but we still, not only maintain our advantage, but increase our advantage at the top of the table. So a lot of this will be forgotten about. But if he gets criticised for 24 or 48 hours online, that's not going to do the player any good whatsoever. So I'm going to ask you the question, how do you think he performed? Do you disagree with my take on it? And how can we better deal with young players coming through?
So, first of all, I'm going to say I think a lot of it isn't on Rocco himself. I think it was a situation he was put into where with 10 minutes to go, you're chasing to try and win the game. And when you look at the bench, the options aren't necessarily there. for players that could come on and turn this around. You'd already brought on Oh. You'd had to take off a couple of other players, and Rocco Vata goes out to right wing, or necessarily is where we play. For me, what it did show was the gap between the B team and the first team. And playing week in, week out against guys, and that's no disrespect to them, because there's still some very good players down at that Lowland League level. But playing that week in, week out, and then, as you say, coming up against a Scotland international, coming up against guys that have done this for years at this level, you could tell there was a gap there. Now, I am absolutely all for the integration of younger players into the team. I just don't think the timing was necessarily right for that. And because we didn't win the game, the criticism probably doubled on what some people would have said wouldn't have been a great performance. I don't think he had particularly the best performance, but then I don't think anybody in that Celtic team played extremely well at the weekend. He was out-muscled by Stephen O'Donnell. He did kind of look very nervous on the ball as well. He put in a couple of great crosses, that's absolutely true. But when you're kind of looking for somebody to come on and win the game, you're looking for a bit more, and that's a lot of pressure to put on the young guy. So that's why I say I think the situation and the substitution itself didn't help him. If we're winning that game 4-0 and he comes on and plays that sort of game that he played, and maybe even scores a goal, nobody would be talking about that. We'd all be delighted that he's come on and he's bagged a goal and he's started his Celtic career in a good way. So he isn't to blame for the draw. He's not to blame for the overall Celtic performance. It's just nobody got beyond that level. We were bang average, to be perfectly honest. And that's just the way it is. Everybody's got this sort of high expectation of him, and they're hoping that he can go on. It was the same when Dembele came into the team as well. When young Karamoko came in, everybody's like, we've seen this guy on YouTube, we've seen this, we've seen all his clips. And then he didn't really hit the ground running. And to be fair, his Celtic career tailed off through injuries and other things. But we've got to sort of level our expectations for when the likes of Vata and Summers come into the team.
Yeah, I agree with that. And he's a winger. So what you're looking for from a winger is you're looking for him to beat a man. You're looking for that type of performance. You're looking for him to beat the fullback with pace, hit the line, get the ball over, etc. So it's really evident. It's not as though you're coming on at fullback, Colin. You might win a couple of headers, a couple of tackles, and all of a sudden you've had a decent game. You're looking for him to change the game, like you say.
If you'd started Vata on Saturday, I mean, he could have went on and had a great game. He could have set up a couple of goals. But as you say, you've only given him 10 minutes. It was so difficult to, one, get up to the speed of the game, and two, make the difference in those 10 minutes. So, and
if Haxa's the third or fourth choice on that right-hand side, Colin, Vata's the fourth or fifth choice. And you've got to remember that. It's a massive step up. And I just think, social media plays a massive part now in football. We can't ignore that. And some of the comments, even just on my post, I thought were unacceptable, and they're not going to help the kid develop. And obviously they are being seen. You can see that as well. They are being seen by the players. A couple of really good points coming in here. By the way, Pete raises a really interesting one. There's talking McCrory going for 2 million from Aberdeen. We should sell them Scales for 1.5. I think the fee that was being discussed, was it not about 800 grand, 750 grand for Scales?
Yep.
Yeah. So if they make a few quid on McCrory, then I actually do think they'll try and turn that move permanently for Scales. Daniel F, welcome back. Apparently, Abada was taking part in the warm down on Saturday. Could he be a surprise inclusion on Sunday? I would love to see it. I think that we're sadly lacking at the moment at that area of the park, Colin. And if Jota and Abada are back, then one starting, one on the bench, I'd go in feeling much more confident than in maybe at the weekend there, when I'm looking at that bench and I'm thinking it's not as strong as we're used to. Phil Deegan, Vata done more in his time than Haksabanovic did in his last 2 games. Haxa has been very disappointing. I don't disagree with that at all, Phil, but I would say that for me, it's not his position. The right-hand side's not his position. Over 1,000 strong on the live stream today. Thanks, everybody, for getting involved with that Celtic State of Mind. Give us a thumbs up on the YouTube channel. Let us know what you think in relation to the lineup for the Rangers game as well. We've been banging on about Liam Scales, and no wonder what a finish that was, Colin. But you and I have already spoken about the amount of players we have loaned out on a season-by-season basis. At the moment, we've got 12 loaned out. And I've said, it's not an exact science. You can't force a team to take a player, for example, and I get all that. But surely we should be trying to manage that better so that more of our players are playing in our league. They'll never play against us. They're never going to damage us, but they might damage the opposition. And Liam Scales showed that yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, we've spoken about this on quite a few occasions, and there is players in and around the squad that don't necessarily get the full game time, that you think, yeah, do you know what, you could go and further your development elsewhere. How many times did we speak about maybe Mikey Johnson going to Hibs or Stephen Welsh going out and doing that as well? So we've saw it in the past where guys like Ryan Christie went on, had a great loan spell up at Aberdeen. Chris Ayer was pretty good at Kilmarnock. And obviously has a great result for Scales and for Celtic yesterday. The thing is, there's a... trying to think of the right word here. There's a sort of like... The teams in Scotland sort of look down their nose at signing guys on loan from Celtic at the minute. When we spoke about Scales going to Aberdeen at first, Aberdeen fans were absolutely gutted and raging at the time that there was no option to buy in Scales' loan deal because they didn't want to be developing another Celtic talent that would go back to Celtic Park and maybe eventually come back to bite them. So there's almost this sort of like, we want to develop our own talent rather than look at the talent that's out there. But it's really short-termism because you take a look at that Aberdeen side last season, obviously finishing in the bottom six. This year, they've turned it around, albeit I think the standard of the league's probably worse this year. But they've turned it around, and now they're going to be playing in Europe next year, and they can build on that.
Yeah.
Whether Liam Scales is part of that future or not is going to be up to how much they're going to be able to make off of European football. But the difference that he can make, we spoke about this earlier on, the recruitment for other teams in the league is extremely poor. Very, very poor. And I feel like I'm picking on this guy because I mention him every time, but Aberdeen signing guys like Anthony Stewart over signing perhaps Stephen Welsh on a loan deal,
it doesn't make sense. Criminal. No, you're right, Colin. It doesn't make sense. I think their frustration when they took Scales was they'd already done something similar with Adam Montgomery, where they took him on loan, but there wasn't an option to buy. And by the way, it's an option to buy. We've got a player in, people maybe forget, Kobayashi, was it Kobayashi? No, Iwata.
Yep.
He's on loan. But there's an obligation to buy. It was the same in Maeda. He was on loan so it's just an option to buy. You can maybe say to Aberdeen, because he scales his performance, he's right, we want £1 million for him, knowing that they can't or won't pay it and he comes back anyway. But you're right. I think Welsh is a great example. I would much have rathered Welsh play 25, 30 games for Aberdeen or Hibs than sit on the bench and not be in a squad because there's nowhere else for you to go if you're Stephen Welsh or James McCarthy. You're not going to get games anywhere. You can't play for the B team. So, yeah, I think that's a great example. And some of the comments coming in. Stevie Kenny, time for Vata to start games, got a wee gem in our hands here. I agree with that. And we've also got Irishman in Porto coming on to say, what would be the best for his progress, though, next year? A loan or stay around and maybe play the odd 20 minutes here and there. Important that he doesn't become another Mikey. Discuss. I think that at this stage, Colin, the worst case scenario for Rocco Vata next season is for him to play for the B team. So you've got to ask yourself, right, you look at the recruitment at this moment in time, when everybody's fit, we've got enough cover on the right-hand side because you bring in James Forrest to that equation as well. Mm-hmm. There's been talk that Abada might be leaving in the summer. If he leaves and we replace him, Vata's no higher up in the pecking order, is he? No. And at that time, I would be saying, right, get him games. And if that means he goes out for a season-long loan, go out and do it and get games. Sometimes there's a concern that he's not going to have the same style of football, the same approach, except the philosophy's not there that Ange is trying to instill. But I think the game time's more important at that stage of his career.
I think now when you look at it, Paul, he's so highly rated that everyone in Scottish football knows who he is. If you've not seen him, you've heard of him because of the way that he's been talked up. So if you put that notice out to the other teams in the league that, by the way, Rocco's going to be available for a season-long loan next year, I would be targeting a team that you think is going to finish around the top 6 for him to go out to. Because we had young Ewan Henderson, who again was a young talent that came through, very highly rated. The game time that he had when he was playing for Celtic, he did pretty well. I always remember back to that game, the first game of Neil Lennon's second term, away at Tynecastle, when he set up one of the goals, and I thought he was outstanding that night.
Yep.
And then we punt him up to Ross County, and he doesn't really get any game time. He's not part of the squad. And Ross County's got a habit of doing that. Rangers had a young boy that I know pretty well, Stephen Kelly, who now plays for Livingston. And they had him as well, and they didn't use him properly either. It's, again, another kind of looking down your nose at the top 2 from Glasgow and the players that you're sending up there. So I would look to put in the loan agreement that he's got to play X amount of games. And this is going to be his position. And by the way, you can have him, and we'll cover his wages if that's going to be the kind of problem. You just want him to go out there and get game time. So I'd be looking for the likes of Hibs, Motherwell, maybe even Dundee United if they bounce back next year. Teams like that like to play attacking football at their own ground. Even the way St Mirren's been playing this year, it would be quite interesting to see them go out there. Mm-hmm. And they could potentially be playing European football next year. I'm sure they'd love to have him.
Yeah, that's what I think. He needs game time. And going back to the point I made earlier, if we're going to put a quality player out, I want him in our league because he can damage your challenger as well. Kevin Mullen. Afternoon, Acsom. Turns out it's a beautiful Monday. 13 clear, 1 win away from another title and en route for a treble. And as we know, the coronation of the king, the real king, being Ange Postecoglou, could well be the 6th of May, Saturday the 6th of May. Colin, that would be an interesting one for us to look back on.
I wouldn't mind if it was the 7th, although the 6th of May has that sort of history to it, and we'll speak about that in a second. But the 7th of May would work for me as well, because they've given us a bank holiday on the 8th. They knew this was coming. They could just make Monday the 8th of May Ange Postecoglou Day.
I'll be here. I'm not getting any days off. Kevin Morton, I wanted to give you a shout out. You're watching in Darlington. It's always great to know where people are tuning in from. Terence Pat, welcome back to the show. Are you concerned how flat Celtic have been in the last 1.5 games? We really need to not only win on Sunday, but put on a dominant display. Concerned, always concerns me if we're not playing well. And we haven't played well in the last game and a half. Terence Pat's 100% right. But I think it's a jag sometimes that you need. And I think there's players in the dressing room, even without Ange telling them, that will be able to put that influence across the rest of the team. Guys like Callum McGregor, people like Carter Vickers and Joe Hart. I think Greg Taylor as well. Apparently he's quite vocal as well. I think, if we're seeing it, they'll be seeing it as well, Colin, and we'll put it right this weekend.
Yeah, I really hope that's the case, and I do have belief that it will be. Look, these games at Hampden, you can't really predict how they're going to go. It's not like maybe 6-7 years ago when you sort of rocked up playing them and they're coming through the lower leagues and you're like, right, we really expect that we're going to maybe stick 3, 4, maybe 5 past them, and we did do on several occasions. This is it's one of those one-off games where they know their season's on the line. They have 90 minutes to sort of salvage something from their season. Mm-hmm. We're going 90 minutes to try and get ourselves headed towards a treble, which would put us as the with the most amount of trebles in Scottish football and world football. So we have to look at this as probably our most important game of the season, and that performance on Saturday won't be enough for us to get the win. So I fully believe that this week at Lennoxtown, it'll be drilled into them how important this game is. And it's as simple as just going out there and leaving absolutely nothing on the park. That's it.
If we get that performance, that, by the way, I don't think we've had in the last 3 games against Rangers yet. We haven't came away with anything less than a draw. If we get that performance that we know we're capable of, Colin, we'll win the game. And then we can look forward to the final from there and hopefully wrapping up an 8th. It will be an 8th treble. Am I right?
Yep, 8. Yep.
Yeah, so there we go. I want you to tell us a wee bit about the women's team, how they're doing. Fran Alonso obviously has recovered from being assaulted on the side of the park by a Rangers coach because he was jumping about.
Shocking.
I know, totally shocking. But Fran was jumping about, enjoying himself. He was even dancing with people in one of the lounges after the game. He's a character. He's brilliant. He's got great charisma about him. He talks really, really well. He's done a few interviews on Acsom over the years. If you want to check them out on the YouTube channel, and while you're there, you can subscribe and give us a thumbs up as well. 1,100 strong on the live stream. Thanks everybody for getting involved. But yeah, we're actually looking at a double this season for another double for the women's team this season.
Yeah, the league campaign. I think everybody's seen the advert for the big game at the Excelsior in a couple of weeks. I think is it the 6th of May that we play them. Which could potentially decide where the league's going. That's 2 games in a row now that Celtic have got the better over Glasgow City. A fantastic finish from Tasha Flint. And do you know, taken away from the game itself, the pitch actually looked pretty good, which is encouraging ahead of this weekend. As long as the weather stays good, which is predicted to be through the week, then I don't think we'll have any issues with the pitch this weekend. So that's one thing we can score out. We know who the referee is. It's Willie Collins. That's another thing we can say that we've put to bed. So yeah, it's great to see someone like Fran Alonso because he totally gets Celtic. He's
totally bought into it, isn't he?
Yeah. He loves the club. He's so happy to be here, and he's got a core of players in that side, like Caitlin Hayes, who won Man of the Match, or Women of the Match, sorry, at the weekend.
Player of the match.
Whatever. But when you see these players, they're delighted to put the green and white hoops on. And we've got to remember, they represent our club and they're doing really, really well. So good luck to them for the rest of the season. Hopefully we can get our first Women's Premier League title and keep this dominance of Scottish football going between both teams.
Yeah, definitely. It is something that obviously has come into the forefront of our minds in the last few seasons. I think during the lockdown season, we took a real interest in it. So it's great that the team are doing well. And Fran does love the kind of principles of the Celtic Football Club on his sleeve as well. There's an interesting comment coming in here in relation to, well, Stevie Boy makes a comment. I think the manager will play Abada. I'm not too sure. What happens, Colin, at the weekend if Abada and Jota are fit? Right, so you've got a situation there where Abada's never really been a regular first pick starter. However, obviously you're going to have to weigh up the fitness of the two players as well. If they're both deemed fit, then for me, if you can sit on the bench, you can start a game. If you're fit to sit on a bench, you can start a game. What do? We revert back to Jota with Abada on the bench, and then we're starting to look a lot stronger straight away.
Yeah, I think Jota, if he's fit, walks straight back into the team. I mean, the importance of what he can bring is unbelievable. It then gives you that extra option off the bench, as you say, with Abada. I'd assume that Vata would be there as well as Haksabanovic. So there's plenty of options to come off the bench, which, as we've seen in the last game against them, can be massive, having those options coming off just to continue to strengthen the squad, because you take a look at their bench just now. Who they brought on yesterday, there wasn't really that many options. They had 5 subs to make, they only brought 3 on. So it tells you that they don't trust a lot of the players that are sitting there to come on and make any difference. For me, if you've got everybody fully fit, Jota goes on the right, Abada on the left, and Keel go through the middle. And I also hope that Rio Hatate's fit for the game as well, because he would walk straight back into the team.
I was going to ask that question because I don't want to ignore the fact that Awata, for me, was impressive again. You know, sometimes with the disappointing second half for everybody, the result wasn't what we wanted. But if you actually want to watch the game back, I mean, some of the things he was doing was unbelievable. Like, he was almost like he's got one of the magnetic toes where the ball just sticks to him, Colin.
He must have took Tom Roderick's boots off the hanger, because the close control was brilliant.
The Velcro boots, absolutely. Yeah. He's got an incredible touch. He's never rushed. He's got the composure. He came off a wee bit earlier than I thought he would, to be honest with you. Love it. Thinks Awata is a class act and will become a mainstay for us. I agree with that. But going back to what you were saying then, right? and I want to hear everybody's comments either on the live stream or underneath on the video on YouTube. Everybody's fit, including Hatate for the weekend. So you've got Hatate, you've got Moy, you've got Iwata, Callum McGregor, and you've got O'Reilly. What's your trio?
McGregor, Hatate, Iwata.
McGregor, Hatate, Iwata, and what's the shape? What's the shape of the three?
Iwata's sitting. McGregor's the 8. Hatate's the 10.
Right. So Hatate's been out now for how many weeks? 4 weeks? 5 weeks?
Maybe a bit longer, yeah.
Touching, yeah. So you put him right back in. You know you can trust him in a game like this. He's done it. He's done it before. You know you can trust him. On the flip side of that, we've also thrown a player back into a game like this, and they looked as though they weren't ready. I'm using Moy as an example here. Moy, who was playing some great football for Celtic. Everybody's gone on about his performances after the World Cup. He'd missed a few games. We threw him back in against Rangers. He wasn't at it, and he's never got back there yet. I'm not expecting him not to get back there, Colin. So that would be my only concern about Hatate. What does everybody think? We're about 1,100 strong on the live stream. Let us know in the comment section, either live or in the comment section underneath the YouTube video, because it's a dilemma, isn't it? Brennan Monaghan, welcome back. You're watching from the Netherlands. Always good to see you in the chat. So yeah, Iwata was brilliant. If Hatate's fit, I mean, I'm not dropping the obvious. McGregor starts every game, and I'm not. By the way, I'm not dropping O'Reilly. I'm not dropping O'Reilly because I don't think he's had the last 3 games. I think against Rangers he was exceptional. Played a part in all 3 goals. He gets his goals against Kelly, and even against Motherwell. Yeah, not as great as we're used to, but that is because of the performance of the team. I don't think he could be deemed as one of the worst players in that performance. So I think he keeps his jersey, Colin. I don't think you drop O'Reilly.
It's very difficult and it's very close between those players. I understand the argument about Hatate. I just think when you look at it, he's got that sort of level of natural fitness that even though he's been out for that period of time, I don't think you'll notice too much when he comes back in. Moy obviously hasn't quite got back to the standards, and I think it goes back to like when he was playing those pre-season games and everybody was kind of writing him off. Once he's got a couple of games under his belt, he gets back up to it. And that's kind of natural because he's a bit older than the rest of the players, and he hadn't played a hell of a lot of football for the last 12 to 18 months since he left China, or even when he was playing out in China, there wasn't a lot of football out there. O'Reilly has been really impressive, and obviously his play for the first goal against Rangers was top class. And he's got that ability. He can step up and he can do that. I just think when you look at that, the way that they're going to probably set up, and with it being one of those games that can go either way, I want to completely control the middle of that park so that we keep them on the back foot. The way that we sort of played more in the final and tried to control the middle of the park, which I think we did do in the final, just to give our forward players more opportunity down the field. When you look at it, the second half, when they got that goal and came back into it, then we started to get more compact and we kind of pushed everybody in. At that point, you're looking at who can come off the bench. If we don't play O'Reilly, then he's a great out ball. If we don't play Moy, he's a good player that can come in and sort of clear up. If we don't play Iwata, he's someone that can come in and he can sort of sit in that hole alongside maybe McGregor, and you play the 2 deep sixes. So it's a great dilemma to have. And if everybody's fit, then it's one that's going to be someone that's far more intelligent than myself or yourself and Ange that's going to do that. But if it was me and I was picking it, I think I would go with what I've said.
No, listen, we're all going to have our opinion on it, and I want to hear as many opinions as possible in the comments section. The other discussion point I think that I would like to have is around O as well. So I want to have a wee chat about O. The Northern Soul comes in to make a good point. Afternoon, boys. Drawing versus Motherwell will ensure there is no complacency in the semi-final. The draw might be a good result for us. It may well work out that way. Certainly, it's already worked out as a decent enough result in that it's put us 13 points ahead at the top of the table as well. And Daniel confirms Willie Collin will indeed be the referee on Sunday against Rangers as well. So Stephen McLean on the VAR, I think. We've got, is it Don Robertson's in there as well? I've seen it just before we went live. So it's one of the ones regarding you hope it's not a discussion point. You really do hope it's not a discussion point after the game. Before I get on to then, the predictable links continue with regards to Ange. He's now being spoken about in relation to Chelsea. You mentioned the shocking performance of Spurs at the weekend. It's only a matter of time before they're talking about taking Ange, or what is it, plucking Ange? Are they going to pluck Ange? Is that right? Is that what they're using? As if, he's just on a shelf that you can come along and buy whenever you want. I don't think it's as easy as that, Colin. I really don't. No. We're going to see this speculation. A lot of it will have weight. These clubs will be interested in Ange Postecoglou. But he's not finished his job yet. I mean, the 2 in a row, I'm not going to say it's the beginning. It's part of a process. I think he wants a run at the Champions League. He was just finding his feet. That was his first ever Champions League games this season, Colin. Yep. It was the first Champions League games of many of the players who were involved. And I think he wants a proper run at this. And I think after the transfer window he's just had there in January, plus another one this summer, we'll see a team that will be far more capable of playing at that level next season.
Yeah. Look, Ange's obviously got his eyes set on Europe for next year. I don't think he goes anywhere. And why would you? I mean, okay, Spurs and that, what are you going to get? You're going to get money, you're going to get a chance to play maybe in Europe. But the Premier League down south just gets rid of managers as if they're just a disposable commodity. I mean, that's what Chelsea's get rid of 2 this year. Southampton's get rid of 2. There's very few managers that manage to get 3 or 4 years down there in a row. It's gone are the days where Arsene Wenger led Arsenal for so long and Alex Ferguson led Man United. Mourinho having his 3-4 years at a club and he could afford to have a bad year and then he'd bounce back. Klopp's probably one of the only ones that's pretty much untouchable, him and Pep at the minute, and even talk of both of them leaving. So I don't think it's something that Ange wants to go and experience unless it's perhaps his last job, because he knows when he goes down there, it's not as if in 6 months he can turn that team right around.
What are you going to build?
He works on a project basis. So if you take a look at any of the teams he's been at, it's always been a good first season, a far better second season, and then they build on from there. You don't get the chance to go there. I mean, the best club as the example of this is Watford. Watford have had 13 managers in 11 seasons. And then they turn around and say they're giving this manager they've got just now until the end of next season. There's no chance he lasts till the end of next season. There'll be 3 other guys in before that contract even runs out.
I know. You just need to look at the run of Manchester United managers since Alex Ferguson stepped down. Why would you enter that circus? But obviously we will deal with any speculation as it comes. Before we wrap up, I do want to talk a wee bit about, that's 2 weeks running. I think he should have burst the net. And at the weekend there, that is what you're buying him for. That's why he's in. You're buying a guy here who's playing full international football. Colin, he's by all intents and purposes, he's replacing Giakoumakis. And now the discussion goes along that, Giakoumakis would have scored that. Is it an upgrade? Is it a downgrade? All this kind of stuff. I think the time is now for O to step up. You're not a kid. And if you get a chance like that 2 weeks running, you've got to score it.
You do. However, I'm going to take you right back to when Giakoumakis first joined in his first couple of games, and especially that game against Livingston where he missed the penalty in the last minute. Mm-hmm. How many people were writing off Giakoumakis at that point?
My problem with Giakoumakis was his performances against Alloa and Hearts. I thought his touch was unbelievably bad. The Livingston game, it was the penalty that a lot of people was giving him stick for. But you're right, it took him a while. It took him a while to settle.
Yeah, I'm not going to pass any judgment on O until next season. A couple of games into next season. I think you look at the players that have made that adjustment in culture and moving over here. Hatate had a good start, tailed off towards the second half of last season, or the second half of last season even, and then came back in and he's been a revelation. There's only certain players that can hit the ground running, and I think Kyogo was one of them, and the reason for that is he's a bit older. I mean, I think he's 28, 29 now, so he's like ages with me when he moved over, whereas at 22, he's going to take a bit of time to settle. Yeah, we've got the players here that can help him integrate within Scotland, but he needs that time and he needs a pre-season to go from what he's used to playing to the style of football that Ange wants him to play. Yeah, I think he should have put that ball away on Saturday, but I'm not going to write him off yet. I still think there's a really good player there, and we'll see the best of all towards next season.
It's really balanced. I'm not writing him off either, Colin, but if the ball drops him 12 yards out with 5 minutes to go on Sunday and it's one each, are you confident he's going to score?
Do you know what? I'm going to back him. Yeah, I'm
Nice.
going to say he will. Yeah, why not?
We'll come back to that. Barry, by the way, I agree with Barry here. I disagree with you, Colin. Maeda is always going to play against Rangers as he keeps Tavernier pinned back.
I did say I would play Maeda on Sunday.
I thought you said Abada, no?
No, Maeda, Jota, and Kyogo.
In-game management, Colin. You can change your mind in-game. It's fine. No problem. I'm sure you said
Abada. You can go back and watch the tape. It's all out there.
I'll watch the tape. I'll watch the tape, and it'll be a better tape to watch than the VAR, I'm sure. 20 years ago today, we were playing in a semi-final of a UEFA Cup, and on that particular night, away from home against Boavista, we win 1-0, going through 2-1 on aggregate, drawing the first game 1 each at Celtic Park, and the goal scorer, if you didn't already know, was the one, the only, Henrik Larsson. Now, 2 players who played that night, Alan Thompson and John Hartson, will be joining me on stage on 2 separate stages this Friday and Saturday night. Friday night, we're at Gracie's with Tomo. Saturday night, we're at the Barras Art Design with John Hartson. We're down to 25 tickets for John. I can't remember the last 30 odds for maybe Tomo. If you want to come along, ticket link underneath the video. Every single person that buys a ticket goes into a prize draw. As well, and both of them are likely to sell out, and it'll be great to look back on both of their careers. Colin, there's another special anniversary today, isn't there?
Well, I thought there was, but it turns out the date's wrong.
Oh well,
it was just that we'd seen some great footage.
I'm glad I never took your word for it then.
No, but there's been some great footage put out there today. I think it's Lisbon Lions on Twitter. Go and check it out, and it's the radio commentary from 1986. I thought you were kind of referring to it because I think it was May 6th, 1986, when Celtic have that fantastic performance at Love Street, putting in the 5 goals. And you hear the radio commentary of Albert Kidd's 2 goals against Hearts. And do you know what? It's a young Derek Ray that's commentating.
Is that right?
At Dens Park that day. So it's really interesting.
I've got, and I don't know if it's on YouTube, I'll check first, but I've got the radio footage the night Cadetti scored and blew the airwaves.
Radio 5 Live off there, yeah.
Aye, I've got that somewhere, so I'll dig that out if it's not out there. Always interesting to look at a wee bit of the history. Thanks everybody for getting involved. 1,100 strong. Colin and I haven't fallen out, which is great because there are many disagreements in the mix, Colin. But thanks everybody for getting involved. If you've enjoyed what we're doing today, give us a thumbs up on the YouTube channel. If you want to comment, subscribe to the YouTube channel as well, and let us know your thoughts on how we set up at the midfield against Rangers on Sunday as well. Have we been too harsh on Vata? Have we been too harsh on O? Let us know in the comments section. Thanks everybody for getting involved, and thank you to Colin Watts. Sorry, last minute.
Just one last thing. Yeah, just want to wish Bernie Kelly all the best for their triple bypass on Friday. Got to deal with missing Acsom, but you know what? As Paul says, it's all on YouTube. You can go back and catch up once you're back fit and healthy.
All the best, Bernie. I hope it all goes well, and you can join us in the comments section soon, my friend. So thanks everybody for getting involved, and thank you to Colin Watt for joining me on A Celtic State of